Since you guys absolutely loved the previous video, reaching 600 likes and 30,000 views. But seriously, thank you everyone. I think it's time to make another one. Wait a minute, what's that noise? Oh my god, I'm scared to turn around. I think it's behind me. Oh yeah, I'm cooked. So first of all, let's recap. In Forsaken, there are two roles: the survivors and the killers. The survivor's goal is to try and survive from the killer until the timer reaches 0. The killer, however, has to kill every single survivor before the timer reaches 0. There are currently 5 killers in the game, and each killer provides a different type of playstyle. In Forsaken, there are 10 playable survivors. However, for the killers, there are only 5 of them. Many people argue on who is the greatest killer in Forsaken, but I'm here to answer all of that. I'm here to expose each and every killer in the game. This video is entirely based off of my opinion, of my experiences, and observation. So without further ado, let's expose each and every killer. Starting off with the starter killer, the slasher. Range. Undoubtedly, the slasher is still a pretty good killer. The slasher has 3 moves: the behead, the gashing wound, and the raging pace. Every killer has a basic slash. Jason's slash deals 20 damage and applies bleeding 1, which means it'll deal an extra 8 damage over time, and the damage can be stacked. He is tied with Cool Kid with the highest sprinting speed, with 28, meaning Slasher is great for chasing survivors. Every single move of Slasher is a melee move, and he has no range. Slasher's first skill, the Behead, enables him to dash a little bit and then swing, dealing 20 damage, and it can hit multiple people. When a survivor is hit with the Behead, they will be inflicted with Helpless 1, meaning they are unable to use any skill for a short period of time. However, after the slasher uses his Behead, he will gain Slowness 1 for 2 seconds. Behead could be very punishing, especially if he misses. Up next is the Gashing Wound, which is primarily used to catch survivors off guard or if they make mistakes. His Gashing Wound is a combo move, dealing over 50 damage when you use it upon a survivor, and has a very long cooldown of 40 seconds. An example of Gashing Wound's importantness can be shown in this clip where I am currently chasing Chance. He tries to fire but misses, enabling me to use it. Same as Behead, if you miss the Gashing Wound, it's very punishing since you'll be immobilized for around 1 second. And finally, his Raging Pace, which when activated will highlight the closest survivor and increase every single damage of his skill, and will regain up to 70 stamina. The Slasher's playstyle heavily depends on chasing. Since he has no ranged move, he heavily relies on your mistakes and how the game goes. In my opinion, there's not a single world that Slasher could be the greatest killer. Because 1, without a range attack move, survivors can easily counter him by maintaining distance with him. Another thing that I've noticed about the Slasher is that he is very weak to coordinated teams. If the team knows what they're doing, they can destroy Slasher, like absolutely cook him. It's because Slasher's playstyle also involves him killing each survivor one by one, and if the team is working together, then Slasher will have a lot of trouble. And finally, like I've mentioned earlier, his 2 skills, Behead and Gashing Wound, can be quite punishing if you miss them. Despite him being a powerhouse, I just don't see any potential within him. So I'm sorry, Slasher. but you're not the GOAT. Predictability. For me, Cool Kid is the easiest killer to use and the easiest to counter. He also has 3 moves: Corrupt Nature, Walk Speed Override, and Pizza Delivery. His punch deals 26.5 damage, and like I've mentioned earlier, he has the highest sprinting speed, tied with Jason with 28. His Corrupt Nature is a projectile. When it hits a survivor, it will deal 15 damage and their aura is highlighted for around 7 seconds. It's quite hard to land, but when it does hit, it will be very, very beneficial for Cool Kid. His next skill is the Walk Speed Override. Cool Kid will lunge at the given direction, and if it hits a survivor, it will deal over 30 damage, and the survivor will be applied with the burn status, dealing an extra 15 damage, which is 45 damage in total. And plus, the cooldown for this skill is only 20 seconds, which is absolutely absurd for that amount of damage. However, this skill is extremely punishing if you miss, because Cool Kid will not stop dashing until he collides with a wall or stops naturally. And finally, the Pizza Delivery ability. Cool Kid will summon 2 Pizza Men, which will seek the closest survivor. If the Pizza Men hit a survivor, their aura is revealed to Cool Kid, as well as they will be applied with slowness, and they will also be burnt. Another thing about Cool Kid is that he has 800 HP, the lowest of any killer. And if a team is full of sentinels, there was a literal chance that Cool Kid could die to them if they play well. Even though Cool Kid has extremely low cooldowns, I refuse to believe that he is the greatest killer. Because 1, his skills are easily dodgeable. His Corrupt Nature travels extremely slow, which will give you enough time to react to it. His Walk Speed Override, 2, can also be dodged because it has a wind up, and his Pizza Delivery Men travel extremely slow, which makes Cool Kid reliant on his punches. His Walk Speed Override has a drawback, and his Pizza Delivery Men can also be killed by damage. Number 2, he has a very unreliable way of seeking survivors, because instead of highlighting survivors, Pizza Men will only travel towards the nearest survivor, which means that Cool Kid has to find the survivors by himself. Another thing that I haven't mentioned is that the Pizza Delivery Men will lose sight of the survivors if they have undetected or invisibility moves like 007 and 7's Clone, Noob's Ghost Burger, or 2 times the Crouch. And for the final reason, he is somewhat aim reliant. He has 2 moves that require aim: Corrupt Nature and Walk Speed Override, which are both dodgeable moves. In order to play Cool Kid, you must master timing when and when not to use the moves. So unfortunately, for me, Cool Kid couldn't be the GOAT. Skill-based. In my opinion, I think John Doe is one of the strongest killers in the game. He has 3 moves: Corrupt Energy, Digital Footprint, and 404 Error. John Doe also has a passive where every time he walks, he will leave behind a trail, and if the survivors touch the trail behind them, they will gain the Corrupted status for 2 seconds, and it will deal an extra 7.5 damage. His sprinting speed and M1 are both 27.25. His first skill is the Corrupt Energy. John Doe will implant his hands into the ground and will release 27 spikes towards where the camera is pointing, and each spike deals 12 damage. The maximum amount of spikes that you can hit with a survivor is only 3 spikes. Therefore, the maximum amount of damage you can deal with this skill is only 36. Also, if John Doe hits someone with his spikes, he will gain speed 1 for 7 seconds. Aside from damaging survivors, you can also use Corrupt Energy to trap them. His second skill is the Digital Footprint. John Doe will stomp his foot and then create a shadowy circle, which when if the survivor touches, they will be corrupted and slowed, and John Doe will gain a speed boost of 7 seconds. This skill is basically also another trapping skill, which you can only place 3 maximum. Both Corrupt Energy and Digital Footprint are both setup skills since they have extremely long wind-ups. And his final skill is the 404 error. John Doe will highlight every single survivor for around 3 seconds. However, John Doe's movement will be slowed. This clip here pretty much summarizes John Doe's playstyle as I set up my digital footprint and corrupt nature to trap these survivors, and then I chase after them. They have nowhere to run and they are blocked off by the spikes, which allows me to kill this Shedletsky with ease. John Doe also has another passive that I haven't mentioned. If he is stunned while casting either Corrupt Energy or 404 Error, he will become unstoppable, which means he will gain a speed boost and the maximum time of stun will only be 2 seconds. John Doe is undeniably the hardest killer to master, but if you master him, he is extremely strong. However, it doesn't mean that he's the greatest. Because 1, his skills are somewhat avoidable. This is why John Doe players, when they use their Corrupt Energy, they will always flick their camera because they know that it's very easy to dodge. Same can also be said for his Digital Footprint. And for the second reason, he is very time consuming because his skills have long wind-ups, which can give survivors a chance to react to it or run away from it. And finally, he is extremely weak to open areas. Maps with open areas like Yorick's resting place can absolutely deny every single factor and skill that John Doe has. John Doe excels only in maps with very tight corners and narrow spaces because that's where he can set up his traps. It takes pure skill and knowledge to know when and when not to use his skills, and that's why I believe John Doe couldn't be the GOAT. Aim-based. 1X is also a very strong killer. He is the complete opposite of Slasher because he has a move pool of purely ranged skills. He has the most moves out of any killer with 4 moves: Mass Infection, Entanglement, Unstable Eye, and Rejuvenate the Rotten. 1x1 is the slowest killer with a sprint speed of 27, and his M1 does 20 damage and inflicts poison 1, which deals an extra 8 damage just like Jason. His first skill is the Mass Infection. 1x1 will wind up a projectile, which when it hits a survivor, it'll deal 35 damage. And if the Mass Infection also hits, then they will also take poison damage, so this skill can do a lot. However, if the Mass Infection is used up close, it can deal over 67 plus damage. His Mass Infection is also quite hard to avoid because it's such a big hitbox. The next skill is the Entanglement. It's quite similar to Mass Infection, but it has a smaller hitbox and it travels faster. However, it deals 10 damage, but if it hits a survivor, they will be immobilized and there will be 5 pop-up tabs that they need to close in order for them to move again. It can use to catch survivors off guard, and if paired with Mass Infection, it can deal up to 50-ish damage. One more thing I forgot to mention is that if 1x lands his Entanglement, he will gain speed 2 for about 3 seconds. His third skill is called Unstable Eye, 1x's method of finding survivors. 1x will highlight the survivors, will gain a speed buff, however receives blindness 3, making his vision blurred. One thing I would like to say about 1x's skills is that they have extremely great cooldowns. And since he has a very low base speed, the speed buff for Entanglement and Unstable Eye is extremely useful. And finally, his last skill, the Rejuvenate the Rotten, allows 1x to summon a minion for each survivor he killed. The minions will only attack the survivors if they are close to them, dealing 14 damage per punch. If 1x kills his own minion, he will gain a speed boost, and yes, this can stack. 1x1's playstyle isn't really meant for chasing, as he relies on his skills. His playstyle is like that of a sniper, relying on precision and aim of your skills. He is also great at finding survivors because every single skill can reveal where a survivor is. A lot can be said about 1X's strengths. However, I'm here to talk about his weaknesses. First, like I've mentioned previously, he is very slow. His base speed is only 27, which makes him quite weak in chases. He is very weak to jukes and looping. And also his mass infection wind up can also be very avoidable sometimes, but like I said previously, pretty hard to dodge. And two, like I said, he is very aim reliant. Since he's quite slow, he's not really that good in chasing, so that means he has to rely on his aiming skills. However, now you have to worry about landing them. So yeah. And three, his projectile moves cannot be aimed upwards unlike Cool Kid, so if you maintain elevation, his mass infection or entanglement couldn't really hit you. And that's what sucks about 1X. If you suck at aiming, then just don't use him. Unfortunately, if you rely on aim, you couldn't be the GOAT. Complex. For Noli, I couldn't really think of a good reason. He is overall very well-rounded in my opinion. Noli has 3 moves: Void Rush, the Nova Star, and Observant. He has a movement speed of 27.25 and his stab deals 25 damage. He also has a passive where at the beginning of the round he can summon fake generators, which can be used to disrupt survivors, applying hallucination to them. Noli's first skill is the Void Rush. Upon holding the skill, Noli will rush towards the target, dealing 10 damage and applying hallucination. If Noli hits the survivor while hallucinated, it'll deal an extra 40 damage. This move is similar to Cool Kid's Walk Speed Override, however, you can actually turn. His second skill is the Nova. Noli will throw a projectile. When it hits a survivor, it will deal 15 damage, and the survivor is pulled in. The Nova Bomb radius will be bigger if it hits on a wall, and it'll be smaller if it hits on the floor or manually explode by pressing E. And his last skill, Observant, is basically his method of finding survivors, as it will inflict hallucination upon every single survivor, and hallucination levels depend on how far they are. He can choose to teleport to any generator, making him very great for mobility. Every single one of his moves is quite similar to Cool Kid, however he takes skill. There are 3 levels of hallucination. Hallucination 1 is where you observe changes to the timer. Hallucination 2 is where you see fake things like fake Builderman, healing dispensers, or fake Elliot pizzas. And hallucination 3 is where there will be a fake clone of Noli that will start chasing you and trying to kill you. But since it's just a hallucination, it won't do any damage. If survivors solve fake generators, then they will automatically gain hallucination 3. To find out if a generator is fake or not, you could notice visual changes, corrupted audio, wrong money currency for whenever you solve a generator puzzle, wrong XP amount, or sometimes you could see Noli's face in the generator's hood. Despite Noli being a very well-rounded killer, I just don't believe that he's the GOAT. Because 1, like I said, he is very complicated and complex because there are so much factors that you have to know in order to play Noli, and just so much to remember, and plus he's quite difficult to play, and he's very skill-based as well, same as John Doe. Number 2, his hallucinations and fake clones can be very useless against an experienced player because they will just know the difference and they can just choose to ignore it and not bother with it. And one thing I want to really share with you guys for number 3 is that Noli is actually very weak to corners. Like, no joke, if you can just loop him around like certain corners, he couldn't really do much because of his skills. Void Rush couldn't really turn that much, and Nova can't really be useful because of the walls. There was one line that I've read online that really summarizes Noli. He is basically Cool Kid but takes skill. Unfortunately, it could be true. He isn't the GOAT. So, did your favorite killer get exposed? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys made it to the end, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to show support for me, and as well, hit that notification bell to never miss any of my videos. This took me around 5 days to make, so yeah. Once again, all of this is just in my opinion, so please don't get mad at me. And I thank you guys for all of the support. Out of all these 5 killers, which one do you guys think was the best? For me, the best one is...
You're next, Elliot.